Shalom, Akim Shalom. Before I begin this lesson, I want to start off by giving all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachakwadash, and double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us this truth. A sincere Shalom to the hopeful like this out there, listening, learning, and or teaching in truth and sincerity. Shalom. Okay, Akim, so today I want to make a lesson about, what we the true, the Hebrew Israelites believe, really speaking for us here at Great Millstone, what we teach, okay? Because there seems to be a lot of people out there, a lot of jakes, and, heathens as well, talking shit about how that we say that, oh, you're going to get saved by your skin color and this, that, and the third, or that, oh, the Lord chooses people based off skin color. We do not teach that here at Great Millstone, man. Okay, and I thought about, when I'm explaining this to someone, or if I explain in the video, which I've made similar videos like this in the past, but I start to think like, man, a lot of these people out here, and ultimately if the Lord ain't dealing with you, the Lord ain't dealing with you. But at the same time, I thought, man, these people just don't have attention spans, man. It's like if I have to explain it in more than one sentence, the person just zones out, right? So I thought, it would be interesting if I could come up with a sentence where I could sum up what we believe as far as what makes you an Israelite. What is that determined by in one sentence, so that there's no excuse, man? Because people, especially these people that love to debate, they like to cut you off. They like to, wait for you to stop talking or take a breath so they could jump in with their, different traps and schemes and mental gymnastics. And it's like, okay, well, the Lord had it on my spirit when I was at the plantation, man. I was just kind of, this sentence popped into my head, man. And it wasn't this one here. But I kind of, it was two sentences actually. And I thought, how could I put these two sentences into one? So the first sentence that popped into my spirit, it says, I wrote it down, it's paternal lineage, not skin color. And the second sentence is, skin color is carnal, but race is spiritual. Wow, and I completely forgot about that. Okay, so yeah, I want to make that statement, man, because people think race and skin color is two different things, but no, or Salakia, they think it's the same thing, but no, it is not the same thing. It is two different things, man. Race is spiritual, but lineage, or Salakia, race is spiritual, but skin color is carnal, right? It's just like if a woman goes out and gets lip fillers and a BBL and, gets her skin, darkened, she could pass for an Israelite, right? If an Edomite woman did that, right? Okay, so race is not a carnal thing at all. And that's the thing that the so-called Christian scoffers out there and, all these different people that scoff at us, they don't realize, man, these things are all spiritual. Race is a spiritual thing. Okay, but see, you people are carnal, and so you look at us and you project your carnality onto us. We're not carnal like you people, man. And we're not simple-minded. See, you people out here are simple-minded. And so you can't understand in your pea brain that what we teach is the 100% truth according to the scriptures, man. And a lot of you don't respect the scriptures either. You don't respect us, and you don't like the Bible either. So what are you doing trying to even talk to us anyway, man? Okay, but that's besides the point. So back to this sentence, man. It says, we do not determine race by skin color, but by patrilineality. Okay, it's a big fancy word, but it sums up a lot of words into one. So we can condense this into one sentence, man. And, whenever somebody talks about, oh, well, this, that, and the third, and what do you believe, and what's the difference here? And it's like, okay, patrilineality. And that's it. Now they can't say anything. Now they got to open up the dictionary and be educated. You see? Patrilineality and a person's paternal lineage is deciphered through the spirit. Okay? So to break this down, we got to get the definition of these words, man. Okay? And before we go into patrilineality, I want to go into patrilineal in the etymology. So this is Etymology Online. Patrilineal, adjective of lineage, kinship. What is kinship? That is your race, basically. Okay? Blood relation, kinship. Okay? A sharing of characteristics or origins, right? Salakia, one more. Down here in the thesaurus, relationship, relatedness, right? Being related, family ties, family connections, blood relationship, right? Your kinship is patrilineal, traced through or descended from the father, right? So your family traced through your father. Okay, so that determines your race, is who your father is. And we know, according to the scriptures, that the Israelites descend from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Specifically that line. Abraham being the father of Isaac, Isaac being the father of Jacob, and Jacob, also known as Israel, being the father of us Israelites. Okay, we descend from Jacob, so it has to be through Jacob, not simply through Abraham, because through Abraham and Isaac, you have other people as well. Like through Abraham and Isaac, you had Esau and Jacob, but we know that Esau was rejected and Jacob was chosen. So it has to be that specific line through Jacob. Okay, notice how the scriptures doesn't talk about, Jacob's wife or his wives and Isaac's wives and Abraham's wives. No, it's just patrilineal. Okay, so again, traced through or descended from the father. 1904 from patri and lineal. Okay, and now let's go into patrilineality in Wikipedia. It says patrilineality, also known as the male line, the spear side, or agnatic kinship, is a common kinship system, right? It's a system because when you go into the scriptures, all right, a lot of the lineages you see, the majority of them is going through the father's side, because that's how you determine somebody's race, is through their father. And I'm going to get a scripture right now that proves that. We're going to go to Numbers chapter 1 verse 18. It says, and they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they declared their pedigrees after their families. So that's your race, by your families, by the house of their fathers, right? Okay, and race in this aspect is talking about tribe, because you had different tribes. So you have the nation of Israel, and then you had, at this time, you had 13 tribes. Okay, and so the different tribes, right? Now we have 12. But besides the point being that, if let's say your mother is a Judite, but your father is an Ephraimite, well, guess what? You're an Ephraimite because it's based off what? The house of your father, right? Which is going to go into, it says, by the house of their fathers. Okay, so your pedigree or your family is determined by the house of your father. Okay, so if you were a Judite, or Salaki, if your father was a Judite and your mother was an Ephraimite, then you're a Judite, right? If both your mother and your father is a Simeonite, then you're a Simeonite, right? If just your father's a Simeonite and your mother is an Issacharite, well, guess what? You're a Simeonite, because it always goes through the father, okay? It says, according to the number of the names, from 20 years old and upward by their polls, right? We can even go into that word pedigree, man. Just get the definition of it. Salakia. Here we go, and they declared their pedigrees. H3205, right? Yalad, which means to bear, to bring forth, to beget, gender, travail. Okay. Day of birth, to declare one's pedigree. Okay, that's the point, to declare one's pedigree. So just to go more in depth, let's get the word pedigree. Pedigree, the record of descent of an animal showing it to be pure bred, right? Pure bred, because you're not a mixture of your mother and father, right? Like today, people like to say, oh, so-called Latinos are mixed breeds, all right? Or, light-skinned black people, you're mixed breeds. Native Americans are mixed breeds, so on and so forth, all right? But it's just not true, because you are who your father is. And ultimately, I'm going to show an example later of how, someone who you think could be so-called black or so-called white is actually something else, man. All right, I'll show you an example of that. But, this is not for the simple-minded. All right, you actually going to need comprehension skills, critical thinking skills, and ultimately, first and foremost, the Rachak Wadash got to be dealing with you, man. Because at the end of the day, this is spiritual, man. This is very spiritual. This is not carnal teachings that we teach. All right, it's all according to the scriptures, right? So if you have a problem with this, you don't have a problem with us. You have a problem with Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai, because we're breaking down the scriptures accurately. Okay, but back to patrilineality. In the Wikipedia, it says, is a common kinship system in which an individual's family membership derives from and is recorded through their father's lineage, right? It generally involves the inheritance of property, rights, names, or titles by persons related through male kin. Okay, that's all we need from here. Okay, now, paternal lineage, which is another word that I brought out here. Right, so we do not determine race by skin color, but by patrilineality, right? So through your father's seed, right? Who is your father? Who is your father's father? Who is your father's 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 father? And does it go all the way back to Jacob? That's the question. That's the question. Okay? And a person's paternal lineage. Okay, well, what's paternal lineage? In the AI overview, paternal lineage is the direct male ancestral line, tracing family history from father to son, grandfather, and beyond. It is determined using Y chromosome DNA testing to identify paternal haplogroups, which, at the end of the day, these carnal means of testing, where people send a saliva sample and they try to get tested the scientific way. I won't even say the scientific way. I would say the Edomite way. It's unreliable, okay? But the first part is what we need. Paternal lineage is the direct male ancestral line tracing family history from father to son, grandfather, and beyond, right? So, if we lived in a world where, it was the Lord's will for us to have all these records, we wouldn't need faith. We would just be like, oh, well, I'm an Israelite because I got this book of all my records tracing back thousands of generations all the way back to Jacob. And I know, and so I don't need faith. You see, but the Lord didn't set it up that way. The Lord set it up in a way where a lot of us and most of us, actually, the majority of us have no clue where our lineage goes back to if we were to rely on carnal means. If we were to rely on carnal means, right? Okay? Because you don't know down the line, right? You could be so-called black. You could be the darkest skinned so-called African American here in America. You could be like Shaquille O'Neal or even darker. But guess what, man? If 4, 5, 6, 10 generations, 20 generations down on your father's side, is a so-called white man, then you're an Edomite. Doesn't matter how dark you are, man. So now this opens up a whole nother can of worms for you carnal-minded Israelites out there. And so that's why we will get on you, they call them the so-called the black unconscious community, man, because y'all are unconscious, man. You're just going based off looks. You know, I mean, if we really went off looks, man, you would say Michael Jackson is an Edomite because he lost his skin color, but you don't know that. The only reason you know that is because you saw it on TV. But what if we lived in a world without TVs, man? And without internet? You would just think he's a so-called white man if you were carnal. But then you see how he could dance and how he could move and how creative he is. And you're like, man, there's something special about that cracker. It's like, no, man, he's a Jake. Okay, and that might be a crude example because you can still see the nose. Well, no, he took a nose away, right? He made himself look like an Edomite, or however that story goes. I don't know too much about it, but I'm just speaking off what I know. Okay, just for this crude example, but you get the point, right? So with that, now we got some definitions going. I want to move from here and I want to explain another point, okay? So, you know, the way this ties together with being spiritual is we're going to look at Exodus chapter 20, verse 5. It says, "Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them nor serve them, for I, Yahweh thy power, am a jealous power," right? So the Lord is telling our people don't bow down to idols. This is the beginning, the cause, and the end of all evil. Is bowing down to idols, man, because through the worship of idols came the corruption of life. This is why the world is so fucked up, man. This is why we're not in power, all right? Because we worship these idols, and these idols lead to a domino effect of all type of wickedness and sin on the earth, man. Okay? And we being the greatest people on the planet Earth, you know, we can't rule this world if we're worshiping idols, man. We got to worship the true power of Yahweh Bashim Shai. And so when the Lord returns and raises up his elect, okay, we're going to be made perfect and we're never going to sin again. Okay, but the point being that the worshiping of idols was the root of all these sins, man, because, you know, that's where, you know, like for example, man, you know, child sacrifice, Moism, women being harlots, all that came from Baal worship, the Queen of Heaven, you know, all that stuff stems from the idol, because the idols, in order to worship them and get the power you need, you know, that power, whatever magic you're trying to get from them, you have to live a certain lifestyle, okay? And that lifestyle is contrary to the scriptures. The scriptures, the Bible tells you how to operate. We have laws for everything as a people. We've had laws for all type of things. Okay? So the Lord is telling our people, don't worship these idols because Yahweh is jealous. He's a jealous power. Right? Like a man ought to be with his woman. We ought to be jealous for our woman, man. Our woman shouldn't be hoeing out, looking at other men. Yeah, I'm jealous. No, you can't go out for girls' night out. Okay? Sit your ass down. You know? Put some clothes on. Right? That's how we are. All right? So now that's the point of that. So now the next part is the key. It says, visiting the iniquity of the fathers. Remember, paternal lineage, the fathers, upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. So the Lord is going to visit your evil in the third or fourth generation through your father's lineage. Why? Why does the children 3 generations down have to suffer for the sins of their fathers 3 generations up? Because that's you coming back in the reincarnation. Okay, so you are your father 3 or 4 generations down the line, man. So you are your great-grandfather, right? And that is a whole nother lesson, but I've made lessons on that in this channel. The apostles and elders have made lessons like that for decades, and the rest of the brothers on down in GMS here, we've already gone into that. So if you're learning, what you ought to do is pause this video and go watch a lesson on reincarnation if you don't understand it, and then come back. You see, this truth is not for the simple-minded, right? This is why we don't debate with so-called Christians, man. Because I'll have to hit 3 or 4 points, and they have no clue what any of those 3 points are for me to even prove my point to them. They haven't even read that in the Bible. They didn't even know that existed in the Bible. So how am I going to argue with somebody that doesn't even know how to, figuratively wipe their own ass? There's no point, right? So, getting back into it, I'm going to read that again, this bottom part. Visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. So this is the system the Lord set up. Is through your father, your race is determined by the seed of your father. So now it makes perfect sense when you think about slavery. Who did slavery to us? The Edomites, the so-called white man, right? The transatlantic slave trade not too long ago. But a lot of these so-called white boys now will say, well, we didn't do it. We didn't do slavery, right? But they did do it, because that's them coming back in reincarnation now to reap the benefits of what their grandfathers have done. Okay, but you may have a so-called light-skinned man today who hates Edomites, and he feels strongly for this truth that we got. He could be an Israelite because somewhere down the line, right, one of the slaves, the so-called black slaves, might have gotten together with a so-called white woman. The kid came out light. He had a thing for these snow bunnies. Then the third generation, fourth generation down, he looks like Eminem. And he can rap and dance and all that and do what Jake does. Okay. Or maybe he's really smart, very intellectual, because our people are the salt of the earth. And you see that on his spirit, and you're like, oh, that guy is different. That Edomite is different. No, he's not an Edomite, man. He just looks like one. He's actually that slave coming back in this life, but with the look of his oppressor, which that in and of itself is a curse. That in and of itself is a disadvantage, man. All right, but everybody's gonna live their own personal version of hell in this captivity. Every Israelite is gonna live their own personal hell, man. Because at the same time, okay, now certain Edomites won't know that you're a Jake. So maybe you'll get a little bit of slack from that. But now your own people might hate you. You see? So, we got different punishments. But, that's the point on that. All right? So, yeah. Okay, not only... So this destroys the argument. If you understand the reincarnation, it destroys the argument of being a mixed race. There is no mixed race. That mulatto that you see, no, he was a slave with you, man. He just happens to look a little bit lighter now. Okay? Or he may be an Edomite. If his father, it depends on the paternal lineage, like I said. And how is that determined? Through the spirit. All right? And so we're going to get into that. This is Romans 8:16. The spirit, right? The Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. Right? This wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the Bible. The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High. Yahweh, Ba'ashem Hawashai. Because why? Okay, not only do the Israelites go back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but if you go back to the garden and you understand the dark sayings of the book of Genesis, man, verse 1 says, in the beginning, powers created the heavens and the earth. Those powers were the 144,000 of the elect. Okay, and those Israelites, those were Israelites back then, man. Right, and they are known as the children of the Most High. And not just them, the rest of the Israelites are also, all right, known as the children of power, or the children of God. Okay, it's just that there's a hierarchy. You got the 144,000, and you got the rest of the elect, and then you got the 2/3. Okay, but nevertheless, all Israelites are the children of power. Okay, right? Because you can remember in the Old Testament, it talks about the sons of power saw the daughters of men, roughly paraphrasing, that they were beautiful. Right? That's talking about how, the Israelites of the ancient world, they started banging out these heathen women, man. Jake likes his variety, man. We'll deal with all type of women, man, and there's nothing wrong with that. The Lord made them for us anyway. The Lord made everything for us, for the Israelites. Okay, the whole world. Even though we don't get to enjoy it right now because we're in our punishment. But when we're in our glory again, all right, we're going to have the fatness of the earth like Esau has it now. Okay, but our spirit bears witness, man, that we're Israelites. Okay, we know we're Israelites, man. This truth resonates with us very strongly, man. We feel that we are cursed for something we did in our past lives, man. We feel that we are oppressed, and we really are, man. This world hates us, right? We're talented people, but we can never seem to get ahead, man. That's the curses of Deuteronomy 28. A lot of our people woke up through the curses. They started, seeing how their life was, and they read about the curses, and they're like, this is our people, man. And then you read into history, so-called Latinos, so-called Native Americans, so-called blacks, all right? Those are the Israelites today, okay, for the most part. And we say for the most part because there are chocolate-covered Edomites, right? Dark-skinned people who may be Edomites or other heathen races, right? But they just look like us. Same thing, you could have someone that looks like a heathen, like, Bruce Lee. He looks Asian, but he's a Jake, right? Or, someone who's light-skinned, like, I don't know, for example, Conor McGregor, right? And he could be a Jake, right? So on and so forth. But that's the thing. Well, the reason we say so-called Negroes, so-called Latinos, so-called Native Americans is because it's a rule of thumb, right? Mixing happens, but it doesn't happen like with every single race. Otherwise, we would all be tan or brown. We would all be one shade, right? So races tend to separate, okay? But there is mixing. So there's, you can't be simple in this thing, okay? So yeah, you got the so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans. If you look like that, you probably are an Israelite, but not always, not always. And if you look so-called pale or white, you probably an Edomite, but not always. Okay, so it's through the spirit that we ultimately determine these things. Skin color is just a sign. It's just one piece of the puzzle. It doesn't determine who you are. Okay, but it is a majority thing because the majority of Israelites are going to have color. Okay, so with that, I'm going to show you an example, man. Okay, and before I show the example, this is the 12 tribes chart we go into. Just a quick point here. You got the southern kingdom, which is Judah, Benjamin, Levi, the so-called Negroes, West Indians, and Haitians. Okay, they went into a whole nother captivity than the northern kingdom, which are the so-called Latinos, Native Americans, right? Simeon all the way down to Issachar. Okay, we went into slavery in a whole nother area, and we've been separated from the southern kingdom since the time of Egypt. No, Salakia. Since the time of when Assyria took the northern kingdom down. Okay, so from the time Assyria took the northern kingdom down until when they brought so-called Negro slaves here to the Americas, that's how long we've been separated. So, we've been breeding with other people, and so our skin color had become lighter. Okay, but ultimately, we go back to Jacob, who's a dark-skinned man. Okay, and, most races were dark. The only light-skinned race is the Edomites. Okay, and they became light-skinned through the curse of Cain, which, I've made a video about that. But anyway, the point being, man, okay, this is what happens. Like the scripture said, we would be scattered in all nations, all right? And we've been through so many different slaveries, man. That's what happens. Our people mix. Our people are scattered throughout the whole earth, and we're not all going to look the same, man. Okay, and I'm going to give you an example. And you know what? We're going to ask questions. We're going to ask questions real quick. I'm going to ask, before we even go into the article, just a little brain experiment, little spiritual experiment. Okay? Okay? Which one of these here, right? Or I'll just ask it like this. what would you call this woman and what would you call this woman, right? You can pause the video and make your judgment. But if you make your judgment and you're sure of it, then you're going off, man, because we don't know. The right answer is we don't know. But off face value, we could say, you know, more than likely or most likely she's a Jake or she's an Israelite and that she's an Edomite. But that's as far as I'm going to go. I'm just going to say most likely or probably. But if that was the final answer, I will be wrong. Okay? So let's get into the article, man. And the funny thing is, these two right here are blood sisters and they're twins. Okay, they are actually twins. But just one came out light and one came out dark. Like the story of Jacob and Esau. Where you could go back to the Old Testament and read about that. Which we bring that out all the time, man. And we're going to go into the article real quick. Just to get the hot points. It says, meet the biracial twins no one believes are sisters. Right? So she looks like a complete Edomite and she looks like a complete Jake. So what's up with that? So we're going to read, man. It says there's a set of biracial twins in the UK who are turning heads because one is black and the other is white. Right? So the carnal Israelites would accept this girl. But they wouldn't accept this one. Not knowing they're the same race. Again, race is spiritual. Skin color is carnal. All right, now watch this. Born in 1977 to a white father and half Jamaican mother, which there's no such thing as half Jamaican, but we'll just assume she's her father is Jamaican. The mother. We'll just assume that for the sake of argument. The sister have grown accustomed to getting mistaken for being just friends, and they've even had to produce their birth certificates in order to prove they are in fact related. Barcroft Media reports. So as you can see right here, the correct answer to our little experiment is that they're both Edomites. Okay? They are both Edomites. Okay, so these both had you Jakes in slavery, man. And, you know, that's just being, you know, going off the carnality. Because if you want to go really deep, well, what if he's a Jake and we don't know? You see? So we can't trace his lineage all the way back. And we can't trace her lineage all the way back. Which we wouldn't have to trace her lineage anyway. But we can't trace his lineage. Because he's the one who determines who's who. Okay, what race these children are. Okay, it's through the house of the father. So yeah, we don't know, man. We really don't know. But like we read in the book of Romans 8:16, I'm gonna read it again. The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of power. Okay, and if children, then heirs, heirs of power and joint heirs with Mashiach, if so be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together. So the point being, man, you know, hey, that salvation is for the Israelites and really only for the elect, man. So, you know, on this side, we're not even worried about who's an Israelite and who's not. We're worried about who's the elect. Okay, and the Lord's going to bring certain people to the camp who are going to start teaching and preaching this truth, right? Who are possibly of the 144,000. And some of them might come looking like this, man. We're not going to turn him away. If he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, you never know. He could be a Jake. So, you know, we don't teach that skin color only thing. The skin color is just a general rule, man. It's just a general rule. It's like, you know, y'all know what a general rule is, right? Let's say, I don't know. I can't come up with an example, but you could look up the term general rule, man. We'll look it up right here. What is a general rule? General rule is a general rule in most cases, right? In most cases, you see someone that looks like this, it's an Edomite, but not in every case. Okay, and I'm saying the same thing over and over again in this lesson, but that's just the spirit, man. It's repetition is key to learning. And hey, those of you that end up being destroyed, you're not gonna have an excuse, because I repeated myself like 20 times in this lesson. So and not just myself, but the other brethren out there, man. Okay, now we're gonna grab one more precept here. The title of this passage in the scriptures is called Jacob is named Israel. And we're just going to read it from Genesis 35 and 9 on down. It says, "And the Most High appeared unto Jacob again, and when he came out of Padan Aram, and blessed him. And power said unto him, Thy name is Jacob. Thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel." Right? So Jacob's name was changed to Israel. That's why we're called the children of Israel. "But Israel shall be thy name." And he called his name Israel. "And power said unto him, I am power almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins." Right? "And the land which I gave Abraham and Isaac, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land." Let's get the word seed, man. H2233. Zerah, I believe it's Zerah. And seed, sowing, offspring, a sowing seed, semen, virile, because the children come out of the father's testicles, man. Just keeping it real. Semen, that's where it comes from. So it's going into what? The descendants of what? The paternal lineage. Okay? Paternal lineage. The system of patrilineality. Okay, so the Lord told Jacob, or Israel, that he's going to give his seed, meaning his children, his sons' children, their sons' children, their sons' children. Not the mother, because the mother can mix, and it could be an Edomite woman that mix, and then the kids, Salakia, I said that the wrong way. Because let's pretend that Jacob married an Edomite woman and had kids. And, the Lord is not going to give that Edomite woman that land. The land belongs to their children. See, the Edomite woman is going to be excluded. The heathen women and their kids, let's say that Edomite then goes off and sleeps with another man, commits adultery. Her kids are not going to get that land. So the land is going to stay in that line, that father's line, going from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then you got Judah, going all the way down, man. Okay, so that's the point. All right, the land was going to be given to Israel's seed, and the seed goes through the father's paternal lineage. Right? It's patrilineal. The scriptures are patrilineal, man. So going full circle, all right? For those of you out there that don't know, us Hebrew Israelites, we do not determine race by skin color, but by patrilineality, and a person's paternal lineage is deciphered through the spirit, because we don't know 100%. We don't have all those records, so we determine it through the spirit. We make an educated guess, all right? We determine that our spirit is an Israelite spirit through the spirit. Okay? And the people out there, I can't say for sure who is 100% this or 100% that, but I can make a good guess, a good educated, spiritual discernment. Okay? And that's all that we need. That's what the Lord gave us to work with. That's all we need. When the Lord reaps or sends in the reapers, right, they're going to separate the wheat from the tares, right? The tares being these chocolate covered Edomites, these people that, you know, we thought were Israelites, but they were actually heathens. Okay? Like this woman, man. You know, she could end up being all trendy and be like, oh, I'm a Hebrew Israelite. And then come time to find out, oh, she was a chocolate covered Edomite the whole time. And the Lord will destroy her and put her in slavery, man. All right? And so, you know, that's just what it is, man. And that's what the scriptures teach. So it's spiritual, man. It's not like you know, these scoffers and jokers out there who like to make us look simple. You know, y'all are the real simple ones. You know, I bet you a lot of you people out there didn't even know what this word meant. All right? But anyway, that's the lesson. I want to finish by giving all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rachakodash. Double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us this truth. A sincere shalom to the hopeful like this out there, listening, learning, and or teaching in truth and sincerity. Shalom wa, abba babo.